Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this latest in the series of Mosaic virtual coffee breaks. On this occasion, once again, we have with us our expert on compliance and all things to do with compliance, Amy Bell of Teal Compliance. In this session, we'd like to focus on one of the things which, to me, as an observer of law firm management, is the key to a great deal of this, and that's the issue of culture of compliance. Amy told me off. I thought at one time that she'd got 3 C's of compliance. I only got it half right because apparently there are 6. Amy.
Yes, there are. Well, who knew there was going to be 6 C's of compliance? But one thing I set out to answer when I was thinking about how we help firms with compliance is what are the problems? And we all do this, don't we? What are the most common problems that our clients have? And then we try and build solutions to help them. And what happened was I thought it'll be about time and getting access to information. But then when I went out to speak to my clients, I said, what's the biggest problem you've got that I can help you with? They all said the same thing, which is despite the time and effort that they put into compliance, people in the firm still won't do what they want them to do. That's the biggest problem that is reported to me from compliance people. I thought, well, why is that then? And I started trying to solve that problem, which is where we came up with the 6 C's of compliance. It definitely is the case that sometimes compliance officers don't know what they need to do, aren't getting good quality training or access to practical implementation, the theory of the law, but not how to really get it working. So that's the first C. The second one is having the capacity to do it and resourcing it properly. And that can be really difficult in smaller firms, particularly because often the person responsible for compliance is responsible for loads of other stuff as well, recruiting, supervising partners, or even client work. So making sure that they've resourced that properly. And then you get onto the communication of relevant and practical is super important. The 4th C of compliance is commitment. And this is a tiny activity, but actually a really important step. A lawyer will never break a promise. Now, they might not do something you've asked them to do because they're busy, but they won't actually break a promise if you ask them to, because of undertakings is so in our DNA. And yet we never do that. We just ask them to say that they've signed and they've read it, not that they've promised to comply with it. So that's a little secret weapon for compliance there. And the 5th C is about consistency, which is about control frameworks, which we talked about in the other session, which is we have to keep the message on. It's all very well having a big burst of energy around policies and training, but if you're not consistent about it, it won't happen. And then the biggest C is the last one, which is culture, is the 6th C. Now, here's the thing. You can do all of the other 5 C's, but if your culture isn't right to support it, it won't work. You're literally wasting your money. So that's why, even though culture is not really what I do, I diagnose it all the time. I see it and it plays out. You see it where a certain particular influential person in the business isn't doing what everybody else knows that they should be doing. That's a really key sign to me that a compliance program is probably not working, and the firm is likely to have that problem despite the time and effort, and people aren't doing what they say they're doing, because one person who's influential and visible getting away with not doing it, other people go, why should I do it? They, especially in the way that we incentivize lawyers. So we incentivize lawyers on performance, we incentivize them on billing. And so the shortest possible route to be able to do that is the one that they want to get. And sometimes that doesn't comply with what we're hoping that they'll do for compliance. So we do see this kind of conflict really between compliance and everyone wanting to do the right thing, and then actually quite often the practicalities of how the business is running.
So Amy, how do you go about helping law firms modify their culture so as to give compliance an even chance?
I tell you, the most common thing that I diagnose in a firm that would help would be the ability for people to have honest conversations with each other. I think this is a real key thing for me, is that we know that these people aren't doing what they should be doing, but we don't feel able to challenge them about it. And I think recognizing that law firms do struggle with having honest conversations, difficult conversations, is a real key. The other thing, as I just touched on there, is incentivizing people and really looking at why people aren't able to comply. most people who work in law firms don't not comply on purpose. It's just they're sat there with a very binary choice sometimes: do the billing or do my archiving. We've all been there. We all know what we're talking about. So, you know, we're like, oh, I've got to get the billing done. And so I was a lawyer, and I used to have the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet, and only when it was overflowing would I find the time to do the archiving. So it's just really taking a step back. What's interesting when you look at problems in law firms, if you do root cause analysis of them, I mentioned before human error, and how I think that I try and ban human error as a reason when I'm talking to law firms. And like, let's just take that as a given, that nobody meant to do it. They didn't come in this morning to do it on purpose. But get past that. What I often find is that when we are asked to look at the root cause of something by, say, our insurance company, when something's gone wrong, it's had to a claim, the insurers probably want you to investigate why and satisfy them it's not going to happen again. And what I find is the process that people go through there is not particularly thorough, as in they stop at, oh, that person doesn't work here anymore. And that's not the reason it went wrong often. The reason it went wrong is more likely to do with overcapacity, lack of training, or a cultural issue of those rules don't apply to me. It's not solved by the person leaving. And so really thorough root cause analysis. I always recommend to my clients that they look at a system like 5 Whys, where you literally...
Gosh, that takes me back.
Well, I love it, Barry. I mean, I'm sure you know some better ones by now, but I just think it's such a simple process. Ask yourself why something went wrong 5 times. Sometimes you go off in kind of little different routes because there might be several contributing factors, but really getting down to why has this thing gone wrong? And therefore what we can do about it. I really believe that if you get the data, if you do that exercise and you get the data, then you can make better decisions as a business rather than knee-jerk ones.
So how do you overcome the issue of it doesn't apply to me?
First of all, you need the honest conversation. Second of all, you need to be super clear on what you expect people to do. And that's where that commitment step comes in, because here's the thing I see in loads of policies. If you look at some, you'll probably see the same. Breach of this policy may be a disciplinary matter, full stop. Well, that's not telling people what's going to happen and in which circumstances. It's a fallback that you want to use if you have to get rid of someone, really. I mean, but what if this person is consistently not doing it and it plays out? So some really great processes I've seen firms use. My favorite one is there's a naughty list. So if you have compliance failures picked up on file reviews twice, you go on a naughty list. If you're on the naughty list, you cannot be promoted or get a bonus. So nobody wants to be on the naughty list. They're like, I'm going to get, if I have a problem, I'm going to make sure I'm not on that list by then. I have seen firms that celebrate people who are compliant. And here's the opportunity that I think is kind of the maturing of the process. And here's the thing, and when you've got people who get 100% compliant all of the time, I'm asking why you're still doing 3 file reviews per quarter on that person, because they're just going to tell you they're compliant. How about spending more time on the ones that aren't? And this is where the real opportunity comes from, getting the data. You can start to make decisions about how to ramp up or ramp down your compliance based on that. And that's the secret, really, to being able to have the resources to be able to manage it.
I guess one place I look at it from, Amy, is particularly in smaller firms. And when you've got equal partnerships, it's pretty hard sometimes actually to enforce. I mean, Nigel's obviously an expert on that as well. How do you tackle it in those circumstances?
It's really interesting. One of the first things that I do if I am helping a firm with this is that I sit down with the partners and I explain to them. Because here's the thing, I once came across another really simple model that we've talked about before, Barry, about insight to colours and understanding that different things are important to different people in different ways. And what I realised was, around that partnership table, you're very likely to have all the different kind of perspectives there. You've got the person who's worrying about the money, and the person who's worrying about the people, and the person who's worrying about the clients. And so one of the first things that I do is I run a session, which is called We're All In It Together, where we explain why compliance is important from each of those perspectives so that people understand. And ultimately, I wouldn't say this is 100% the case, but quite often the person who's not doing it is not doing it because they want to annoy anybody or get frustrated. They are so committed to their clients, to getting their clients a result, or they're very motivated by the billing that they can do. It usually falls into one or two camps in my experience. And explaining why a person who is really committed to the success of the business financially, and explaining that you're literally wasting money sending people on a training course and they're not going to do it if you don't do it, reaches them in their head. The people who are, you know, your clients really need this. The whole point of compliance is to keep your clients safe. It's compliance is just a framework to operate safely. An interesting thing I think I've seen last year with all the stamp duty holidays is that conveyancers didn't feel safe because they knew they were operating quite often outside of capacity and they couldn't get everything done without having to work stupidly long hours. Did a poll actually. Now, what I found was just under 50% of people felt that if they made a mistake at work, they wouldn't be safe, as in that would have a consequence for them. And what we don't want to discourage is people letting us know about things going wrong. That's problems. You sit down and speak to the support staff, they tell me straight away what's not working in the policies and why it's not working. But they don't often have a voice to be able to make that known. So, you know, the communication works both ways. You telling people what you want them to do, but also making sure that they can tell you. And critically, when it's in the scenario you've outlined, Barry, where there's a partner, an influential partner, making it safe for support staff to say, this person's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Please, can you sort it out? And because then I can't do my bit. I've had a story that I told once. I worked in a firm that had centralized typing was introduced. Everybody, all of the support staff, all the lawyers came on a course that I did, saying this is the way typing is going to work from now on and this is why. And then one person didn't do it, and I got a phone call from one of the ladies on the floor saying, can you go and speak to, I'm just going to call her Sandra, can you go and speak to Sandra? She's crying because the partners just stood outside and shouted at her until she did the typing, despite having had the training, despite having had both people having the training. Now, that partner was just trying to get something urgently done for his client and get it right, but the pressure of that lady on poor Sandra, because she didn't know what to do in those circumstances. And it's really explaining that. No partner I know would want a secretary crying on a floor.
Amy, that is absolutely fantastic. We could have gone on far longer, but we haven't got enough time to do that. So I would just like to say a great thank you. We look forward to seeing our viewers again on the next session. Thank you very much, one and all.